Hey, Federated family, it's Thursday, June 4th, 2020. On Tuesday, we started studying Psalm 90, which begins with the words, "Lord, you've been our dwelling place throughout all generations." Today, I want to talk about a hymn that's based on Psalm 90, an old favorite, "Our God, our help in ages past." It was a hymn written to calm and comfort a nation during crisis. And that sure sounds like us these days, doesn't it? COVID-19 still rages, and riots are raising our fears. Deaths and injuries are mounting. Businesses are burning. Political infighting paralyzes meaningful action. And some days it just seems like the whole planet is teetering. Well, Isaac Watts knew how that felt. He penned this hymn for days just like this. He wrote it in 1714 and addressed it to the citizens of England during one of the waves of religious intolerance that swept the country. Watts's father, Isaac Watts Sr., was a Protestant minister, and it was said he had, and I quote, nonconformist sympathies. He was often imprisoned for preaching and acting outside the bounds and teachings of the state-sanctioned Church of England. It was the custom in church during that time to have psalm singing during worship, where the leader would sing a line from a psalm and the congregation would respond. One day, Isaac Watts Jr. complained to his father that psalm singing was boring, to which his father replied, "Then give us something better, young man." And that's how young Isaac got his start writing hymns. Watts attended university and then went on to be a pastor, but he was plagued by chronic poor health. And one year, Isaac Watts accepted an invitation from a wealthy parishioner to go to his country house to convalesce. Watts packed his bags for what he thought would be a week-long visit, but he ended up staying for 36 years. That makes Isaac Watts the world's worst house guest. But he is also considered one of the world's best hymn writers. For over his lifetime, Watts completed 600 hymn texts, and he changed the way that Christians sing and worship by expressing our belief through song. Then in 1714, Queen Anne took ill. She was a Protestant and had practiced religious tolerance during her reign. But with the Queen's seeming demise, Parliament passed what they called the Schism Act. This act required anyone who wished to be a teacher or preacher to receive a license from the Church of England. Watts and other Protestants would have been excluded from that. They would have been forced to toe the line of the Church of England, and they protested. Watts wrote, "Our God, our help in ages past," to comfort his fellow Protestants who stood to lose much by the passing of the Schism Act. Paraphrasing Psalm 90, Watts reminded them that God takes the long view of time, while humans are caught up in the trials and tribulations of the current crisis. One stanza from the hymn says this, "1,000 ages in thy sight are like an evening gone, short as the watch that ends the night before the rising sun. Time, like an ever-rolling stream, bears all who breathe away. They fly forgotten as a dream dies at the opening day." By coincidence, Queen Anne died the very day that the Schism Act was passed, meaning she couldn't sign it into law. And her successor, George I, repealed the act before it could even be enforced. For this reason, the Queen's death is often referred to as the Protestant Passover. I have one other fun story about this hymn, or about Watts actually. In June 1780, during the American Revolutionary War, the Reverend James Caldwell, who was called the Fighting Chaplin, served with the Continental troops at the Battle of Springfield in New Jersey. He was a Presbyterian minister. His church was nearby the battlefield. The American troops put up a valiant fight against the British, but soon ran out of wadding paper, what was necessary to pack their muskets with gunpowder. So Caldwell ran to his church and grabbed the songbooks filled with hymns, many by Isaac Watts. And he ran out and tore sheets out and gave it to the soldiers, yelling, "Give 'em Watts, boys, give 'em Watts." patriots balled up the pages of the hymn book and won the day. Our God, Our Help in Ages Past is one of my favorite hymns. I remember singing it as a child. It's one of my favorites because it begins and ends with God, who is our help in ages past, and more importantly, our hope for years to come. God is our shelter from the stormy blast and our eternal home. Pandemics and riots and even death are temporary things, but our God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Thanks be to God for God's faithfulness towards us. So we're going to hear the hymn now, Our God, Our Help in Ages Past. I'll see you soon.
There